Morning. My name's Ed Michaels. I'm the 3M Facilities Marketing Manager here at 3M. We are very excited to talk with you about the restoration and maintenance of stone floor care. I will be monitoring questions throughout the webinar this morning. So please enter your questions in the Q&A portion of the webinar, and I'll try to have those answered during the webinar. But with that, let me introduce you to our speaker. It is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for this morning, Jim Erickson. Jim is a highly respected application engineer specialist at 3M. He brings over 2 decades of extensive experience and unparalleled expertise in facility care solutions. With his career dedicated to advancing the science of cleaning and maintenance, Jim has become a trusted authority in the industry. He is known for his innovative approaches and a deep understanding of facility care challenges. Again, throughout today's webinar, please enter your questions into the chat, and we will try to answer them throughout the hour. We'll also have resources available in the webinar in the resource section where you can get the presentation, links on how to request a demo, etc. So with that, welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Ed. That was interesting to hear it stated as 2 decades. I had to do the math in my head quickly, and you are correct. I started in stone care in 2005, and from there grew into using all sorts of flooring types, as well as troubleshooting all of those products. So thank you. As Ed stated, I tend to use a presentation or slides kind of as a guide for a conversation. I would like to make sure that I'm presenting information that is useful to you. And the only way that I know that that is happening is if you ask questions or give feedback. So I do encourage you at any time to enter questions into the Q&A box on your screen. It should be right below the slides. And Ed will be monitoring that and able to, at any moment, pass those questions along, and we'll discuss them as they come up so that we don't miss anything or leave it to the end where maybe it goes unanswered. So please do use that functionality in the presentation. Okay, well, with that, we're here to talk about stone floor restoration and maintenance today. And one of the most important things to know about stone floors is what type of stone we are dealing with. This can have a huge impact both on the way we restore that floor, but also on the way we maintain it. What chemicals may be appropriate for use on that type of flooring, and what type of traffic it may or may not be able to handle. With that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about each one. Natural stone there's about 8,000 different types of natural stone in use out in the architectural world. We do not need to know them all. It's not important that we are able to specifically tell which marble from which country we are working on, but to know that it is, for example, marble. Marble is commonly used in flooring. It is rather easily polished, but it is also prone to scratching. It's rather easily scratched. It is a calcium-bearing stone, which means that it is sensitive to acids. So this, for example, is not a great stone to use as a bar top. For example, the lemon juice, lime juice, some of the alcohols, drink mixes like pineapple juice, etc., are going to etch marble. So it would be a poor choice for a bar top. Commonly, marble has been maintained historically through a process called crystallization. That is a chemical polishing process. We actually use an acid to somewhat melt and reform the surface of the stone. This creates a very high gloss, very hard, durable layer on the top of the stone. It chemically changes the surface of the stone, but it does use some hazardous chemicals, and it can be damaging to the floor over time when done frequently or incorrectly. Most commonly, you will see things like vein erosion, where parts of the stone are worn away or eaten away by the acid more than others, and other instances like corner cracking, where the acid is attacking both from the top and the sides where the grout would be, at the corners, weakening them, and then having corners chip and crack off. So we do not recommend crystallization as an ongoing maintenance process for marble. A note, if a floor has been crystallized, the only way to remove that crystallized layer is through abrasion. So you must diamond hone that floor to remove the crystallized layer. The Trizect process that we use here at 3M, it is a 3-step process, can remove that crystallized layer and polish the floor, and it is non-damaging to the marble. So we can use that. Does anyone have a question about marble or a specific instance where marble has experienced something we mentioned?
I don't see any yet, Jim, but
okay.
When they come in, I'll make sure to share them.
Perfect. Then we're going to move on to granite. Granite is a much harder stone than marble. It's very scratch resistant. In fact, one of the ways to tell the difference between marble and granite, if you are wondering which floor you may have, is to actually take something like a pocket knife or a drywall screw and actually try and scratch the bare floor. If that steel scratches the floor, it is softer than the steel and therefore would be a marble. If it does not scratch, maybe even abrades some of the metal and leaves a mark on the surface of the stone, but not a scratch, then it is harder than the steel, and that would be a granite. Granite is not acid sensitive because it is silica based rather than calcium based. This means that we can use almost any chemistry we want to when cleaning granite floors. It is not sensitive to acids. It is not sensitive to bases. One thing we do need to be aware of, though, is that if we choose to use an acid cleaner on granite, it is possible that the grout may be sensitive to the acid and could be eaten away. So for those floors that have grout lines and are granite, we need to be aware that the grout could be damaged by acid, but the floor itself will not be. Because
Jim,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you mentioned granite, natural stone, it's silica based. Related to marble, sometimes there's a silicone impregnator used on it. What do you do with that situation?
So impregnators are products that generally they soak into the pores of a stone, into the little voids. We can't really see those voids, but the liquid can get in there. And they kind of coat the inside of those pores. And what they do is they change the surface tension properties so that when a liquid falls on the floor, it's less likely or takes longer to soak into the floor and potentially leave a stain. So we have a longer time to clean it up. It gives us some stain protection. Because that product is down in the pores of the floor, it does not create a coating, so it doesn't give us any wear resistance. It generally doesn't change the appearance of the floor, and it does need to be replenished at times. So for example, through traffic or abrasion, if we open up new pores in the floor, new pores are exposed that have never been impregnated, we need to reapply impregnator to ensure we have that stain protection. Once the impregnator is there, we don't need to worry about it. For example, we won't need to strip that impregnator off. We could move to an abrasion or polishing process without removing the impregnator. It sits there under the surface where it won't cause us any issues. Ed, do we think that got to the heart of the question?
Yep, I think so. There's a bunch of other questions coming in, and I think maybe we'll get through a couple of slides here, and then I'll try to share them with you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so then we're going to move to another type of hard surface, and that is concrete. Concrete's very, very common now. In fact, polished concrete it's one of the surfaces that mankind first started using as a flooring material. Was concrete, and then modern concrete came into existence, and now polished concrete. So many places, big box stores, big box retail stores are starting to go with polished concrete floors because the concrete is already there. It's part of the building. So there is no additional cost associated with installing the floor, simply polishing it. And a well-polished concrete actually looks very good. If we look at the concrete material itself, it is a calcium-based product. So it is sensitive to acid, and it is a porous material, so it is sensitive to staining. So we do want to protect it once it has been polished. But it is a great substrate and a very low cost floor to maintain. Right in line with that type of flooring is terrazzo. Terrazzo is similar to concrete in that it is a poured material, but it is poured after the construction of the building on top of the subfloor, either the concrete or other subfloor that may be installed. It can be cement-based or epoxy-based or a resin, and the chips within it can be marble, they can be granite. They are even using shells and recycled beer bottles nowadays, so chips of glass. So the hardness and the chemical sensitivity of a terrazzo floor are going to vary greatly depending on the materials that make it up. This is actually one of my favorite flooring types because it can be a beautiful floor designed in any way and in any color that we want. It is low cost and easy to maintain, and it will outlast the building if it is maintained properly. It is an absolutely wonderful substrate to have. And one of those that we can polish the most effectively for a very, very high aesthetic appearance. Okay, so that, Ed, is going to wrap up our discussion about the different substrates. So if we do have questions on that, now would be a good time to address some of those before we move into the 3M system for polishing and protecting.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So a couple of different ones here. One has to do with the maintenance. So how many times a year do you need to use diamonds on a high volume floor? So maybe like an airport or school or some retail facility.
Sure. So the answer is partly included in the question there. It is going to vary greatly with the traffic level and type, as well as what type of protection or maintenance is taking place on that flooring. So for example, if we were to look at just a standard marble floor with maybe a standard cement terrazzo floor with marble chips, in a mid-level traffic environment, you may need to fully restore and hone that floor once every 3 years. And it will look its absolute best right after that polishing takes place, and it will deteriorate in a fairly linear fashion right down to the point where you make the decision to repolish again. Historically, with concrete, like if we use a big box concrete hardware store, generally that full process is completed about once every 3 years, every 2 to 3 years. If you want to keep that floor looking in a high polished state throughout the entire year, what we need to do then is add some protection to that floor. So something similar to the 3M stone floor protector, which we will talk about a little later. Then we can reduce that frequency and the extensiveness of that restoration over time. And we could get that down to maybe using one step of fine diamond abrasion every couple years and replenishing that coating.
Okay. And I'm trying to remember the context of this. Maybe it's something you presented, that epoxy grout, or does that solve many of those issues?
It does. So when we talked about granite and we said that the grout could be acid sensitive, that would be if it's a cementatious grout. If they used an epoxy grout, that will not be sensitive to the acid. And then we could literally wash a granite floor with an acid-based cleaner and not damage the floor or the grout. Some of the metal or anything that may be, door jambs or the strip under the door, the thresholds could be damaged by the acids, but otherwise we would be good.
Okay, awesome. There's lots of questions. We appreciate all the engagement here. Let's see here. One comment about terrazzo, and it's expensive to install, but is it considered low cost after the initial investment? And
yes.
Maybe that's related to once you start using our stone protector system, but.
Yeah, so terrazzo is fairly expensive to have installed. It is an additional cost to the building, and it is a higher upfront cost. Over the long term, when you maintain that floor with a system like our stone floor protector, the cost per year to maintain that floor is actually very low when compared to other flooring types like a VCT floor, for example, that may have many coats of finish applied to it, a frequent strip and re-coat or scrub and recoat process along with it, and eventual replacement of the VCT. The lifetime cost of terrazzo is lower, which matters a lot to a building owner. And sometimes the floors may get passed around, I should say, from building service contractors, et cetera. So.
All right, we continue to get lots of great questions. I think, Jim, maybe we'll continue on here because some of the questions are related to the processes used to restore a floor, how to deal with high points.
Keep some of those in mind then and insert them as appropriate as we move on. So we're going to talk about the stone floor protection system from 3M. Specifically used on the flooring types that we're discussing here, hard floors, so natural stone, concrete, and terrazzo. Our goal with this is to bring floors that may not have much shine or distinctness of image. And what I mean by distinctness of image is that clarity of reflection. So if we look at the after picture here, the ability to see the reflection of those windows, trees, and doors within the flooring itself. That is distinctness of image, or DOI, that the industry has really started to talk about. And make that such that our guests, employees, patients, et cetera, have an inviting space that they feel is clean and well-maintained, and protect the brand image of our facility and or our maintenance company. So we take what may be a dull floor there before, turn it into a nice, shiny, highly reflective floor after, with a layer of protection on it to help keep it looking that way and be easily maintained throughout the year. We're going to do this through a 3-step process. We're going to restore that floor, then we're going to protect it, and then we're going to maintain it. So we're going to restore it to get that high aesthetic. We're going to protect it, help keep that aesthetic, and we're going to maintain it to ensure that the protection doesn't, that there's not a gap in our protection so that we don't have to redo the restore process. There are 3 steps in our restore process. We have a coarse, medium, and fine diamond abrasive. What these are going to do is actually turn a rough floor into a smooth floor. The smoother that floor is, the higher the gloss will be. The smoother that floor is, the higher the distinctness of image will be. So when we have a rough floor with scratches in it, what we have is a scattering of light. So when light hits that floor, it will bounce off in all directions. To our eyes, scattered light tends to look white. So if you look at the blue in these pictures, the blue in the top picture, the before picture that has a little bit of scratching in it, actually will not look as deep of a blue or as rich in color as the floor does after. That comes from the polishing process, the smoothing of the floor. The little abrasives you see here, coarse, medium, and fine, are made up like this. There is a little hook material on the back that allows us to stick them to a floor pad. This means that we can use these abrasives on standard equipment that we already have. We can use it on a swing machine or an auto scrubber. Above that then is going to be some adhesive and a cloth backing to hold everything together, and then our diamond abrasive on the surface. This is the part that's important. This is what's going to do the work on the floor. This abrasive is a unique abrasive, and it is specially designed for use on standard equipment. Many times when you think of diamond abrasives, you're going to think of very, very heavy equipment used by a contractor that may have to put 400 to 700 pounds of pad pressure down to get that polishing done on the floor. This is because of the type of abrasive they use, a fine diamond dust and a hard resin. So when the diamond does dull or pop out, they need a lot of weight to wear away that resin and expose new diamond. 3M has found a way to specially encase our diamonds within a matrix that will firmly hold them, but allow us to use a resin that is much softer so that we can use standard weight equipment, such as the swing machine and auto scrubber you already have in your facility. Contractors or building service contractors that use this process very much like the idea of smaller jobs. It used to not make sense to take all this big equipment. There's a lot of cost tied up with transportation of this big equipment and such into do smaller jobs. But with this type of system, you can literally put a swing machine into the back of a pickup truck and now bid on smaller jobs that may make sense. So not only is it versatile for those of us within a facility of our own, but for a contractor that may be looking to expand into some smaller job types as well. So if we look at an example of what would happen with a black marble, maybe we've had lots of traffic for many years and it looks something like this. We have this dull kind of whitish or grayish colored marble there in the middle, and we want to restore it to that nice dark color. We want to take that light that's bouncing off in a scattered pattern and making it look white and make it smooth so that we get that richness of color back. Well, when we first start with the floor, we're going to have something that looks like this, lots of scratches. This is actually a graph of a flooring substrate taken with a profilometer after the gold abrasive process. To put scratches into a floor, or to take scratches out of a floor, we have to put scratches into the floor. We have to remove all the material above the deepest scratch. So as we move through the process, we will see that gold, then red will become finer scratches, followed by blue, even finer scratches. And then we're going to start our pad process and scrub that with a purple pad until we have a very, very smooth surface. Our goal is actually to make this scratch depth, that little bit of bumpiness you see there, to make that scratch depth so small that it's actually smaller than the wavelength of light and can't interfere with the reflection. Right about now is usually the time I get a question related to how much material we remove from the floor. I have had customers who are concerned that we are shortening the life of their floor by doing this process. When we use gold, red, and blue Trizact in its entirety as the full system, we will remove approximately 701 millionths of an inch from the flooring substrate. That is not enough to even notice. The standard floor tile in the United States is 3/8 of an inch thick. So we could do this many, many, many times before there would even be a noticeable change in the coating or in the flooring thickness. So we're not talking about moving a lot of material, just enough to make it smooth so that we get a nice reflection. Okay, So if we look through this example we were talking about, we're going to start with this grayed out floor. And through that process we saw of making the scratches smaller and smaller and smaller, we are going to turn it into this floor where we have a nice, rich, dark color consistently across the whole floor and protected. We can do this for large areas for the entire floor. We can also do it for smaller areas in floor types. So for example, if we have an area where there may be damage, this particular floor is a concrete floor in a large retail facility where a jug of vinegar has fallen onto the floor and broken. And you can see that the acidic vinegar has actually etched or damaged the flooring there. And we need to polish that out, to remove that stain, that area that looks differently than the area around it. And we'll do that with the same process we talked about with the marble. We're going to use the red Trizact. In this case, we're skipping gold because we don't need it. We're going to use the red Trizact and do only the area that we need to. And then we're going to switch to blue, but we're going to slightly expand. We want to go just a little bit outside that area. Notice how it got a little larger to make sure we don't miss anywhere that we did red. We'll continue through that process, clean up the slurry, and switch to a purple diamond pad and scrub it. Once we've done that, we've taken that etch out of the floor, and we've taken what was this and turned it into that. So we can do entire floors. We can also do repair in smaller areas. This repair process can be done to a floor just as a repair to a floor. It can also be done as a repair to a floor that we have fully polished and protected previously. Ed, this might be a good time to pause.
Yeah. We probably have over 30 questions that have came in, and obviously won't be able to answer them all, but those that we don't answer, we'll try to respond via email with a response to your question. But specific to staining, that one is one that's came up a few times. One was related to, can you get wine stains out of a floor? How long can a stain be in a floor? And are you able to, like if a stain's been on the floor for a long time, are you able to remove it from that floor?
Yeah, so stains within a hard surface flooring, so concrete, terrazzo, and stone. Some of them can be exceptionally difficult to remove, others not so much. Depending on what the stain is, how deeply it has penetrated, and how long it has been there. So there is a process called poulticing, which is the most common process for removing stains that are deeply embedded into hard surface flooring. This is a process where you mix like diatomaceous earth, kind of like a clay, along with an appropriate stain removing agent. So for example, if it was olive oil in concrete, we would use a solvent. So you would pre-wet the floor slightly, mix your paste of solvent and diatomaceous earth, place the paste over the stained area, cover that in plastic, and tape it down. You'd leave it sit there for 24 hours to penetrate deeply into the floor. After that 24 hours, you come and you put slices into the plastic. As that clay kind of dries from the outside, it will pull the solvent and the oil from underneath into the diatomaceous earth. You leave it there until it's dry, scrape it off, wash the floor, repeat if necessary. It can be a very long and involved process. The best option is to, once you have your floor nice, polished, clean, and stain-free, to protect it in a way that we keep stains from occurring. They're much easier to prevent than they are to remove. If you define a stain as any area that looks different than the area around it, we can call this etch a stain. That is an easy one to remove. For example, that one we just polished out because it is basically scratches, areas of floor that have been eaten. In the middle, there are some stains like coffee, tea, wine, cola, tobacco, tannin-based stains. one you see outside often is if the squirrels were to eat walnuts on your driveway here in Minnesota. If you have a concrete driveway, the walnut hulls will leave a very dark, almost black stain in the concrete. That's tannin. That can be removed by an oxygen bleach, such as an oxy product, OxyClean, etc. Mix a little bit of that on, put it on the floor, let it soak in, let it dwell and do its job. Rinse, repeat, keep lightening the stain until it removes. Specific information on stain removal. If you were to Google stone poultice, there are companies out there that sell poultice powders and have guides on which solvents and or materials to use for specific stains. For example, rust, you will use an acid, usually an oxalic acid. And then that'll require polishing afterward. So there are resources out there that we can point you to. 3M, we don't make a poulticing solution, but I'm happy to assist for specific stains.
Thanks, Jim. Another one that came up a couple times is when you have uneven floors, like at the edges, corners, maybe, how do you manage that with using Trizac on a floor that might be uneven, or you have the edges where the bars are? And then same thing with the burnisher. How do you deal with uneven floors?
Yeah, so if it's only slightly uneven, it's not bad. We just kind of ignore it. Trizac will round things out and it'll be fine over time. If it is uneven tiles, we call that lippage. Like if you install stone tile and they're not even, corners are high and edges are high, etc., it's called lippage. If you have a lot of lippage, it can be an issue. And in that case, a contractor with lippage removal diamonds would be the first step to flatten that floor. A good way to tell if you have excessive lippage or not is to take a lippage detection tool. I don't think I have one here. It's otherwise known as a US quarter. And just lay that down on the floor and kind of slide it across with your finger. If you hit a point where the quarter is caught and stops moving, that's considered excessive lippage. If you hear a little clack, 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 clack as it moves, but it smoothly keeps moving under the light pressure of your finger, that lippage is minor, and we can continue with the Trizac process.
Great comment. What about corners? How do you manage
corners, that? I should make a quick note. I am not associated with any company other than 3M, but I use a lot of equipment. So when I mention a piece of equipment, it's because it's one that I use or like and have experience with. Not that I'm trying to steer anyone in that direction. But for corners, edges, hard to reach places like underneath the sinks in a bathroom, etc., one of my favorite pieces of equipment to use is a doodle scrub. It is a small oscillatory piece of equipment about the same size as a doodle scrub or a doodle bug pad. And we actually make a Trizac strip in that size so we can get directly into corners, right along edges, underneath bathroom partitions, behind toilets, etc. All of those hard to get places. It is a great tool for using Trizac. It's also just a great tool for getting into places you may need to. We also use that same equipment on stairways if we need to polish the stairs or do some sort of restorative process to stairs.
Here's another good question. Sometimes floors might be sealed, and I'm thinking this might maybe something different than a traditional floor finish. Do you have to use a stripper to remove that sealant before using the Trizac discs?
Yes and no. It depends on what the sealant actually is. If it's a penetrating sealer where it doesn't really leave anything on the surface of the floor, we wouldn't need to strip it. We could go straight to the abrasive process. If it is a product that leaves a topical coating, a wear layer on the surface, then we would need to strip that off prior to beginning the abrasive process. It is similar to, think of it if you tried to use sandpaper on Jello. It would not work well at all. Trizact, the diamond abrasive, doesn't work well on soft and squishy items, and like an acrylic floor finish would be considered soft and squishy to a diamond. It just kind of skates around on the top instead of doing its job of abrasion. So we would need to remove those types of products.
Might have missed this one if you had mentioned it, but are there power tools you can use for like baseboards and stairs?
Yeah, so we talked briefly about the doodle scrub, which is my preferred method for stairways. You can use variable speed angle grinders. That becomes a very messy process as it tends to throw slurry if you are using the Trizact with them. So I don't recommend that. However, when it comes to burnishing, then I do recommend the angle grinder with an appropriate backup pad and the purple pad to burnish and restore, cure the stone protector and restore gloss to, say, baseboards, etc. The good news is baseboards and cove bases are generally not walked on, so they tend to keep their smoothness. So generally we just need to restore their shine rather than restore them from having scratches.
Very good. Let's see here. So another one is talking about they've been using our stone protector for several years, and now they want to restore the hallways. Do they need to remove the stone protector before, like with a stripper, before they try to restore? Maybe like, and another one related to that is they're only having issues right in the middle of the hallway where all the traffic is. Can you just repair that section using Trizact and
So
not the edges and stuff?
Yes, we can repair very easily. I'll start with the stripper question. No, we do not need to use stripper. That is one of the benefits of the stone floor protection system is once we have converted to that process, we will never again need to use floor stripper. We will only use abrasives as needed. So in the second example, where we have the middle of the hallway has developed a traffic lane, we could take the blue Trizact on an auto scrubber and go up and down the center of that hallway until we have polished out that traffic lane. Scrub then with a purple pad to restore the gloss and DOI. Reapply stone protector to give that protection, and then burnish with a purple pad to cure that product and be done. We would not need to strip it, and we would not need to redo the entire abrasive process. We would start simply with the blue Trizact.
Great. I think that's most of the questions. Again, we'll try to answer, if there's questions we haven't answered, we'll get back to you individually and address that question. But again, appreciate all the great questions for Jim.
All right, so let's continue on. We talked about this slide here a little bit previously about what distinctness of image is. The reason I want to call it out specifically again is that we have many people in the industry that have been using gloss meters for years, and they talk about gloss and shine. I much prefer to use distinctness of image as an indication of how good the floor looks, because our eyes are very, very good DOI meters. They are not very good gloss meters. So gloss is simply the amount of light being reflected off the floor, where DOI is how perfectly it's being reflected, how much of an image we can see. A very good illustration of this is this next picture. This picture shows a section of floor that both have the same gloss level. They're both low gloss. They have a gloss of 16. So back here in the far part of the picture, the gloss is 16, and up here in the front is the 16. But if I were to ask you which of those looked better, the forefront or the back of the picture, everyone would pick the forefront. And that is because the DOI is 80 in that case, where it's only 27 in the back. So the gloss level is identical, but the distinctness of image is greatly different. And that's what makes a floor look good to our eyes, is that distinctness of image. So that is our goal. Okay, well, what do we do once we get it there? We want to keep that floor protected. We want to prevent scratching. In the past, most floors would have a floor finish applied to them, acrylic being the standard. Acrylic floor finish is soft. It tends to scratch easily and be walked off the floor, removed through abrasion of foot traffic. It takes a lot of effort to maintain because once it gets scratched, we have to burnish it to restore the gloss. As that process continues, eventually enough product has worn away or had enough dirt embedded into it that we have to scrub and recoat to get the dirt out and replace the product to get that look back. And after we do that enough times, we tend to get a thick, plasticky look on the floor that just isn't natural. It costs a lot to do all of that maintenance. It is preferable, and in my opinion, looks much better and more natural to switch to a product like Stone Floor Protector. We're going to eliminate that stripper and the maintenance associated with it. We're just going to do a scrub and refresh when we need to, as we kind of discussed. Has very, very good scuff, black mark resistance, very, very hard and durable, so it tends not to walk off the floor. I do get questions about this time about traffic levels. And many locations think that their facility is high traffic, and they may be for their facility. So they've made the comment that perhaps this product wouldn't stand up to their traffic levels. I would challenge you to prove that to me, since this product is used in the airport at JFK. That is very high traffic, as is Chicago O'Hare, very high traffic. So this product will stand up to your traffic level. It is also National Floor Safety Institute certified as slip resistant. This is a third party that certifies products as slip resistant. And one of the best things we can do, because people will slip and fall, right? But one of the best things we can do as a facility is use a product to do our due diligence to prove that we are using products that best protect our employees, our visitors, our customers from slip and falls. And the National Floor Safety Institute has proven that using products that are NFSI certified can reduce slips and falls by up to 90%. So Stone Floor Protector is NFSI certified. And if you would want more information on that certification, you could visit nfsi.org. Not .com, but .org. Okay, so what is it going to look like compared to a typical floor finish? Well, here's an example on a terrazzo floor. Here in the forefront of the picture, we have an acrylic floor finish that's been down for quite some time and actually has had soil embedded down into it. So it is discolored. And on the top, we see Stone Protector at the end of a 1-year trial, at the end of a school year, compared to the acrylic floor finish outside the test area. This is how drastically different the appearance of the floor may be. This bright, clean-looking, white, welcoming appearance in the background of the picture compared to the dingy acrylic floor finish in the foreground. So once we have it there on the floor, we need to maintain it. We're going to do two things. We're going to clean it. Dirt will not take itself out of the facility, so we need to clean it. We're going to use the Scotch-Brite Clean and Shine pad on a daily basis on our scrubber to clean and polish that floor as we go on. And every once in a while, as needed, we'll burnish it with the purple diamond pad just to give it that little extra pop. Maybe you would do this if you're a high school, maybe you would do this before homecoming. Give it a little extra pop because you're going to have a lot of visitors, etc. Something like that. Okay, so should we see some examples? Here we've got a few before and afters in different types of locations and facilities. We have airports represented, we have retail represented, and we have education represented. I suppose you can see the lockers here so you can know that this one is education. This one is retail because of the shelving. And then we have our airports down here. We could take a closer look at demo patches. This is in a large box retail facility. This was actually fairly entertaining. We had people walking around this patch of flooring because they thought it was wet, when in reality, all we did is polish that concrete. So that is dry, ready to be walked on. And another example in retail here over to the right. Ed, I think we've done it. We made it perfectly with our 15 minutes at the end for statements and questions. So I'm going to turn it back to you, and then we'll go to questions as needed.
Yeah, no, great job, Jim. A lot of good information and hopefully ideas that people can take back to their facilities. So a lot more questions here. So let me try to tackle a few of them. How long does the process take? So let's say you have an acrylic finish on your terrazzo floor and you want to convert to the stone floor protector.
Sure. So the stripping, we all have experience with stripping. Stripping that floor is going to take as long as it normally does. That I'm going to just kind of set to the side outside of this restoration process, and we'll talk specifically about the restoration. It's going to be variable depending on what equipment you're using and what type of floor you're on. By that, I mean, if you have large open areas, that's of course going to be quicker and easier than lots of corners and edges. As a general guideline, I can say this, that if I am working by myself with a swing machine and a wet vac and a corded electric burnisher, so the three slowest pieces of equipment I've got, I can do about 100 square feet an hour from start to finish on average. So that's just me by myself with the slowest equipment you've got. So from there, it gets faster and faster. The more equipment, the better types of equipment, and the more people you put at it. We do have an ROI tool that we can use, and that does give you estimates in there of labor and things like that. And I would encourage you to reach out to your local 3M rep, and they can always reference you to me as well. But I like to make sure that nothing happens in one of my sales reps' territories without their knowledge. So I encourage you to reach out to them first.
Okay, awesome. Let's see, there's a question about, is this webinar being recorded? And yes, this is going to be archived as a recording on the cleanlink.com website. So you can view it at that. We can also look at, I think, sharing a link to that file in a follow-up email after the presentation. Let's see what else we got here that we can address. How many passes for each disc, and is a burnisher required as part of the process?
So it's 6 passes with each grade of abrasive disc that you need to use. So for example, if you were to start with gold, it would be 6 passes gold, 6 passes red, 6 passes blue. If we determine that gold isn't necessary, then it would be 6 passes red, 6 passes blue. So it's 6, and a pass is defined by us as one time over the floor. So down and back, for example, would be 2 passes over the floor.
Okay,
A
that makes
burnisher
sense.
is required for the installation. It is required only after you apply the stone protector. So you can use low speed equipment all the way up until the point where you have applied your first coat of stone protector. Then the product must be burnished to cure. And we burnish after each coat. We're only going to use 2 coats, and each gallon will cover 4,000 square feet of flooring. So when we're using this process, we've eliminated the stripper, so we're not going to do that anymore. So there's chemistry that we've eliminated from the process there. When we compare to an acrylic floor finish, instead of doing 4 to 6 coats, we're only going to do 2. So we've eliminated a lot of coating there that we would have used if we hadn't made the switch. Additionally, when we do those 2 coats, we're going to put them down at 4,000 square feet per gallon instead of 2,000 square feet per gallon. So we're going to eliminate even more coating from the process there. So the chemical reduction of switching to stone protector versus an acrylic floor finish, the reduction in chemical usage is quite large.
Question related to high traffic facilities. Is there benefit of having more coats of the stone protector, or do you need more coats of the stone protector? I think the standard is 2 coats. Is that
Correct.
right?
So there can be a slight benefit to adding a 3rd coat. You will get a little longer time period there before you need to do a recoat or a refresh. The more important thing is to make sure you never fall behind. So if we take an airport as an example, the security checkpoint, this is a particular area where every single individual goes through that point. It also is an area where people end up standing around. So they tend to shuffle their feet, drag their bags, etc. So it's a very, very high abuse area that would be very prone to scratching. Because of that, the product will wear faster and it will need replaced more frequently. So you may have certain areas within a very high traffic facility where you may want to apply a coat of stone protector up to even once a month, if we're talking about that security checkpoint, to make sure that the floor stays protected so that we don't have to repeat the abrasive process.
Okay.
Now that is an extreme. I have other types of facilities, like a high school as an example, that in their hallways, not the main entryway, but in the hallways, they have not recoated for over 2 years, and the floors look wonderful. So it is going to be quite variable depending on your facility, and it may even be different within your facility, how frequently you may need to address a particular area.
Okay, great. There's a question related to using the SPP or the surface prep pad, the maroonish colored product that 3M has, to like use it to strip the terrazzo instead of using a black pad and chemical. They had better results using that. What's your recommendation?
The SPP pad, or surface preparation pad, is a pad intended for scrub and recoats. It has a fine abrasive and a whole lot of it. So it does a wonderful job of removing just the surface of a coating and leaving a very, very fine and consistent scratch pattern in preparation for recoating. It is not a stripping pad, and it should not be used with stripping chemical. If you were to use it with stripping chemical on an acrylic that has, let's say, 6 coats of floor finish, I would expect it to clog very, very quickly and lose its effectiveness. It's intended for use with water. Instead, what I prefer to do, especially if this is a terrazzo floor that we are going to polish anyway, is to chemically strip the floor using a black pad, or even a 7300, which is our high pro pad, to remove that finish quickly and efficiently, and then follow up with the polishing process. Because if we put some scratches in with a black pad, we're not concerned because we're going to remove those scratches when we go through the polishing process.
Okay. Question related to limitations of the Trizac. Can we use Trizac on like granite or something. I think one customer was talking about that they've struggled with Trizac working well on granite. What about, yeah, I think it was granite. I'm trying to think if there's any other, maybe ceramic tiles. Are there surfaces you want to stay away with or that maybe Trizac won't work on?
Sure. So first, I'll hit on a few of the surfaces that we want to avoid. Ceramic tile would be one of them. We do not want to in any way polish any ceramic tile. Often ceramic tile has either a texture to it or a glaze applied to it, neither of which do we want to abrade away. Another floor that I avoid with Trizac is slate. Slate is a very soft floor. It also tends to be a textured floor. A customer has installed a slate floor because they like the look and the texture. Using Trizac on a floor like that will remove the texture and turn it into a chalkboard, which is unlikely to be what the customer desires. I will extend that even to any textured floor. So like flamed granite is another example. The textured granite that often will be outside of a building or in the entryway of a building, so that if it does get wet, it's maybe a little more slip resistant. We would not want to use Trizac on any textured floor like that. Also, floors that have a lot of lippage. We talked about how to detect if it has excessive lippage or not using a quarter. Any floor that has excessive lippage, we would want to avoid Trizac with. Now, beyond that, if we have a granite as an example, Trizac works wonderfully on granite. If that granite does have scratches deeply into it, because granite is a harder flooring substrate, it will take the Trizac longer to do the work necessary to remove that scratch. So it is possible you may need to do more than the 6 passes on a granite floor that has more wear than average.
Okay, great. You mentioned 6 passes. One question that came in was a good one. Do you recommend, like when you're doing north and south passes and then do a couple east and west and kind of change how you're using the Trizac?
So the most important thing is to ensure that you have good overlap and you never miss a spot. If you can do that by going one direction, that's absolutely fine. If it helps you to ensure that you don't miss a spot by going multiple directions, that's good too. So it's not a requirement, but it can be a good practice just to ensure that you don't miss a spot. The one time I will say it is a requirement is up against a wall. If we are using, say, a swing machine and we're coming up against a wall on our left-hand side, every time that round machine comes up to the wall, it's going to leave a little wedge there that we can't get. So always when I do that, I then will turn my body and go along the wall back and forth several times to make sure I have not missed a spot along the wall.
Okay, great. We're getting close to the end of the time here. There's a couple more. Oh, relate to the granite. Does the stone protector adhere to it? Will it work on top of granite?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
We can use this on any natural stone substrate, terrazzo, travertine, granite, marble, limestone, serpentine, all of the natural stones, with the exception of the ones we talked about specifically where we aren't going to use Trizac and polish, such as textured surfaces.
Awesome. I think, yeah, we do have in the resources, because a couple of questions about the whole process. There are a couple of links to videos on, step-by-step process of using the Trizac, putting down the stone floor protector, and then in between coats, burnishing it with the purple diamond pad, etc. So there is that there. Jim, can you use like a mop and bucket to put the stone protector down, or what's the recommended process for putting it down?
Yeah, so our stone protector is sold actually in a bag that can be used with our Easy Shine applicator kit. If you do not use that particular system, I would strongly recommend using a flat mop microfiber system of some type capable of putting it down very, very thinly.
Awesome. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, Jim, we're at the end of the hour. We still have questions coming in, but I know we only paid for an hour with Cleanlink, so I think we need to wrap it up. But fantastic job, Jim. I think very informative. I think I learned some new things, so appreciate all the insights and what you shared with the group on the call today. We had quite a few. I heard a record number according to our sales trainer. So the topic was of interest. And again, we'll respond to questions via email that we weren't able to answer. We'll likely have one of our sales reps reach out to you as well if needed. But again, thanks much for joining us today. We'll look at trying to do some of these in the future with Cleanlink, because I think, again, we're reaching a great audience here. I think it was well received. Any closing comments, Jim?
No, I just want to say thank you to our attendees. It is absolutely wonderful when we have engagement from the audience, because then I know that what we're talking about is impactful and of use to you. So thank you for your engagement and for all of your questions. As Ed said, we'll try and address all of those. And I don't know the details of how they will get back to you, but we'll do our best to make sure that is covered. I do encourage you that if you have questions, please do seek out your local 3M sales rep. They can reach Ed and myself as a resource at any time. But my preference is that they are at least aware and have been reached out to first. Thank you.
Yep. And my contact information, I think, is on the last slide. So again, thanks everyone. Enjoy your week, and we'll talk again. Thank you. Bye-bye.